them up and say, I'm going to breathe, and mercy, you can't do it. But we live as though, you know, anybody's going to die, but not me. Oh, some other day, maybe, when I get old. You know, the thing that kind of grieves me is this, that when this fellow wrote this epistle, he wrote 14. If you give him Hebrews, and I give him Hebrews, I think he wrote it. But that guy, I'm getting so Americanized. I mean, this preacher, he wasn't much more than half of my age when he wrote these epistles. I'm much older than he was, but my goodness, he was a million miles up the road spiritually compared with me. It's not how long, we're not going to be rewarded for how long we've lived. If we are, God isn't just. David Brainerd, one of the greatest saints in America, died at 28. Wesley died at 88. Who gets the biggest reward? The man who died at 88, the one who died at 28? No. We're rewarded for faithfulness, not for years. We're rewarded for obedience. We're not rewarded for achievements necessarily. To whom much is given, God will expect much. You say you've more knowledge of the Bible, so what? You'll be in more trouble when you get to the judgment bar. You've this talent, you've that talent, the other. You know, you say about a lady, this dear lady that's praying for us tonight, she has a talent. That's not a talent, that's a gift. In the Bible, talents are always related to money, silver talents and golden talents. And we'll be responsible for those as well. You want to look at Romans 1:14? I know you know it well enough, but let's check it for a moment. I am debtor both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, to the wise and unto the unwise. So do you wonder, he says in another place, woe is unto me if I preach not the gospel? This man has a passion of 100 men. This man wasn't filled with the Spirit at some junction 20 years ago. The Greek there anyhow says be being filled with the Spirit, not just get filled up. There are thousands of Pentecostals and holiness people who are filled with the Holy Ghost. They've been leaking ever since they got filled. But there has to be a constant inflow, that there may be an overflow and an outflow. If you keep a cup under water and the water is dripping down, the cup will fill, it will go over, and then it will go out. And if you and I live in complete subjection to the Lord, the Spirit will fill us. I saw a man write on a board recently a lot of things. Get this out of your heart. Pride, anger, jealousy, suspicion, blah, 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 blah. And I said, brother, I didn't say it to him, he was preaching. I said in my heart, you don't remember. How do you remember all those things? You don't. You just let the Holy Ghost come. And there's an old hymn that says, our blessed Redeemer, ere he breathed his tender last farewell, a guide, a comforter bequeathed, with us to dwell. He came sweet influence to impart, a gracious willing guest. And you know what that word ghost, Holy Ghost, the word ghost is a corruption of the word guest. He comes as a guest. How long does your guest stay? Until they tell him to go. He comes as a guest, and if you grieve him, he goes. But we do the actions, we know the vocabulary, we say the same things, we have the same terms. We gesticulate, we stress. Dear God, help us. But he says, it goes on to say in the hymn, every virtue we possess, and every conquest won, and every thought of holiness are his alone. What's the quotation with you, Martha? Pardon? I know, dear, but how does it start? Well, the middle of it says he checks each thought and calms each fear and speaks of heaven. The Holy Ghost is my inward monitor, and he tells me that's wrong, stop right here. Or go ahead, that's right. I need that inward presence of the Spirit of the living God to be my constant monitor, constant ruler. But he says I'm a debtor. Do you wonder that he sweats and he toils and he works? There's nothing can move him. Boy, I love that statement he makes. Let's say, well, his purpose was, the first chapter, 20 to 21, he talks about dying. Romans 1:14 is his passion. As I've said before, preaching is not a profession, God help us. Preaching is an obsession and a passion. And I love this passionate preacher. How he preaches his heart out. He weeps. No, a preacher that doesn't weep should be fired. I have a little slip, I put it in letters. If your preacher doesn't weep over the pew, organize something in the pew to weep over the preacher. Jesus wept, Paul wept. You see, we're so ready-made. I fear to hear people have just entered into a blessing, so they think that means you resign your job and go preaching. And they don't have no experience. I don't believe any man should enter the pulpit until 10 years after he's been saved or filled with the Spirit. Somebody wrote to me, oh, I've got to get out, I'm young. I said, listen, Jesus is young, and God kept him brushing shavings off his legs at the end of every day for 30 years. The Son of God took 30 years training. John Baptist was 30 years with the wild beasts. Moses, a colossal intellect. Read Acts chapter 7. He was mighty in word and in deed. Before ever God got hold of him. He was a statesman. He made the laws of the country. And yet God takes him to the backside of the desert. James reminded me the other day, in with a friend, he said, well, you're 80 now. He said, well, that's just the time Moses started preaching. Well, I'm hoping to get started soon. Most folk are hoping I'll stop. No. 40 years. You can't preach out of the Bible merely. You have to have experiences to get in your blood. No man's a right to stand up and dictate unless he's gone through the trial. I can listen to this man. He's been in prison, in fasting, in weakness, in weariness. And yet there's nothing is able to pull him down. His purpose then was what? That Christ might be magnified. His passion was what? That he's a debtor. Again, I say preaching is an obsession and a passion. If a thing doesn't burn in me, it won't burn in you. I'm not going to stand up and most preachers don't preach anyhow. Some of you guys, how many of you want to be preachers, like to be preachers? Put up your hands, let me see you. I'll tell you what to do. Eat as little as you can. Oh, good, that's encouraging. Jacob put his hand up. I've been praying he'd want to become a preacher. Here's my plan for you. Eat as little as you can. Sleep as little as you can. Pray and fast